Hey everybody, DJ Exa here. Today I just wanted to do a quick presentation about, well, what is BPI? I've been posting a lot of things in the group about BPI and my BPI tables and whatnot, but I never really took the time to explain it. So that's what I'm trying to do today. I posted a document which is like a treatise on the whole thing. There's a lot of math and technical stuff in there, but I'm hoping that this presentation will be more holistic and more conceptual, not so technical. I warn you beforehand that I do have some of the formulas, a lot of the formulas and important things in here, but I'm not going to talk so much about those. I'm going to try to just leave them there so people who care can look at them, but if you're not interested, just ignore them. Okay, so let's get straight into it. As you can see in the bottom right, I have a credit already. Well, let's talk about that. So the origin of BPI is not me. No, no, no. BPI, which is short for beat power index, was originally developed by a well-known 2DX player by the name of DJ Nori. He's a Japanese 2DX player who's been playing for a long time. He's very, very good, especially at higher level stuff. Just some of his information that he gracefully allowed me to put on this presentation. Thank you very much. Uh, his friend drew an image of him. He didn't want his picture in there, so I just decided to put that in there. Anyway, you can follow him on Twitter at Norimiso2dx, and his website with BPI Calculator and other stuff in Japanese is at norimiso.web.fc2.com. So please check those out. The whole thing started from Nori. He developed everything alone, I believe. So really, I'm not adding anything. I'm just explaining it in English and kind of repackaging what he already did. So all credit goes to him. So thank you. Anyway, let's continue. Let's just get right into it. So why was BPI developed in the first place? Well, let's take a look at an example first, shall we? Say we have two players who play two songs. Shift, another, which has 1,000 notes. I chose these songs because they have easy note counts. And they get scores of 1900 and 1950 respectively. And then they play second song, May, of course, 2,000 notes. Player 1 gets 3,100 EX, and player 2 gets 3050. So we total these up, right? Oh, look at that, 5,000 points. I didn't cook the numbers at all. Uh, they're the same. It's a tie. Or is it? Well, let's talk about this a little bit more. How good is a 1900 on shift? Well, it's max minus 100, or 95%. Okay, fair enough. How good is that compared to a 1950, which is max minus 50, or 97.5%? When you compare that to 3100 on May versus 3050 on May, if you take simply the X scores and add them, you get a tie. So this is the KAC and most tournament formats. You just add the X scores and whoever had the highest X score wins. It's pretty simple, pretty intuitive. However, if you really think about it, is a 50-point difference on shift the same as a 50-point difference on May? I mean, yeah, if you are looking at the world record on May, 3,800 versus, say, 3,750, then yeah, 50-point difference is absolutely huge. But if you're looking at 3,100 versus 3,050, is a 50-point difference really as big as a 50-point difference on something like shift? If you take it even more extremely, what's the difference between a max score of 2,000 on shift and 1950? I mean, I think most people would agree that a maxed score, which has been achieved, by the way, by DJ Hinata, is absolutely amazing, even on a song like Shift, which is pretty straightforward. But that is amazing. It's difficult to max any songs anyway, and Shift is a 10. So, but whereas a score like 1950 is great, but by no means amazing. It's not top ranker level, that's for sure. So you have to think about how close are the scores to max to get a sense of how, how much of a difference is there really in the scores, right? Because 3100 and 3050 are so far, sorry, from max, which is 4,000 points, a difference of 50 really isn't that big. But, the difference between 1900 and 1950 on shift is probably bigger. So that's where the whole idea for BPI came from originally. So let's start looking at some of the derivations in the theory. I'll try and keep this as simple as possible, I promise. So Nori defines what he calls the PGF or pika grade function. In Japanese, they call them pika grades for perfect grades because they shine. Pika means shine. Maybe you remember from my old other video on Japanese terminology. Anyway, here it comes again. So the PGF, given a certain score rate, for example, 90% on a song. So earlier we saw shift 1900, that would be 95%. Given such a rate as a percentage, the PGF of that rate gives you a number x, okay, where you get 1 grade every x notes. So basically it says, okay, you have a score. What's your ratio of P grades to grades, roughly speaking? And it's not x to 1, it's x minus 1 to 1. But basically, just in any, say, 10 notes, you can get 1 grade, 1 regular grade. And this assumes, of course, that you don't get any goods or misses. This is just purely P grades and grades, just for the sake of calculations. So this will show maybe more clearly the difference between scores on May and shift. We'll come back to that in a second. Just the formulas for those who care. Simplified PGF of rate is 0.5 over 1 minus rate. You can test this, for example, using 90%. We get 5. So think about that. That means so every 5 notes, you get 1 grade. So that means you have 4 P grades and 1 regular grade, which means you have what? 8 plus 1 points, which is 9, out of a possible 10, which is 90%. Good, it works. Ah, good. Math works. Yes, I love it. Okay, anyway, so this is really the most important point in the BPI theory, this function and this idea that you have to achieve a certain ratio to get a certain score. And the higher your ratio, the better your score is, of course. But more importantly, when you compare your ratio to someone else's, or to a different song's ratio, or to the world record, or to the Kaiden average and whatnot, as we will see, that really gives you an idea of how good your score actually is relatively. So let's apply these to the example I just had on the previous slide. Here we go. So applying the PGF to this example. So here's our example from before. I haven't changed anything. Let's just directly apply the PGF function, and here's what we get. So the PGF applied to 1900 gives you 10. So every 10 notes, you can get 1 regular grade. So that's 9 P grades and 1 grade. Yeah, that works up to 95%. And on 1950, you get a PGF of 20. Double. So, okay. Very simply, we could say that player 2's score on shift is twice as good as player 1's score. Now, okay. That's a bold claim, and that's not necessarily true. But generally speaking, in terms of the ratio that was required to get that score of 1950, it needed to be twice as good. So does that mean the score is twice as good? Well, that's a point for a discussion. But anyway, let's just go to the next one. So again, to compare May, how different are these ratios actually? Well, you'll notice that they're really not that different, right? Which is what we expected. 3100 gives you 2.22, and 3050 gives you 2.11. Okay, really not that different, because the scores are relatively lower compared to the max score 4000. So, well, if we just quickly total these up like before, well, okay, very, facetiously, okay, player 2 wins. If you were to just total the PGFs. Yeah, but again, as I said, Does a higher PGF, is that an absolute measure of a score's quality? No, it's not. But relatively, it might give you a better idea than just simply the X score, which is really just a number. Yeah, well, anyway, so that's just an example. Let's just continue and see what happens. So, for BPI, going back to BPI. So we know what the PGF is, and we kind of have a general idea of the theory behind it. What's the required data to calculate the BPI? Well, first, we have the score, which we want to calculate the BPI for. Of course. We have the Kaiden average. Okay, we will discuss this more in a little bit. Z, server record, or world record. I'll talk about the difference between these two in a second. And finally, of course, M, the max score. So these are the only 4 pieces of data, or 4 numbers that we need actually to calculate the BPI for any song, with some exceptions that I will go into. But anyway, generally speaking, this is all that's needed. Okay, why score and max score are very easy to understand. Why did we choose Kaiden average and server record? Well, for the most part, BPI is used to calculate scores that are pretty good, say above the Kaiden average. For example, a AAA on AA and other. Okay, just as an example, we'll talk about that later. That comes up as one of my examples. But generally speaking, BPI is best for scores that are not necessarily top ranker level, but Kaiden level, or above the Kaiden average, which, believe it or not, is actually quite low, as we will see later. But in any case, the K and Z that you choose are really not so set. They can be changed. Really, just all it is an upper limit and a lower limit. K being the lower limit and Z being the upper limit. So all that does is place a restriction on the score, so the score has to be between the lower limit or the upper limit. Otherwise, the formula that we'll see in the next slides won't work. But in any case, this is a very wide range, right? Server records on most songs, especially 12s, are extremely high. And only the select few people like Dolce and Mitzvah and 1048 and other such people can actually achieve such scores anyway, so really it's no problem. And the Kaiden average is generally quite low, actually, despite being the average of Kaidens, who are supposed to be good. Anyway, it's generally quite low. So there's a big range of scores. Yes, right. And just quickly to comment, the difference between server record or world record, you can actually choose. Both are completely valid for the calculation. Server record is more if you want a sense of your BPI with the current players, right? Because it's the current server record, for example, on Pendule. Or if you prefer, you can use the all-time world record ever achieved if you want to have a more so-called absolute BPI. I mean, you can make an argument for both, but as we all know, some players retire, new players come in, whatnot. Well, I mean, it's probably a good idea to keep a current measure of what the best score is on any given song, so that's why, for the purpose of our calculations here, we're going to be using the server record. But the world record is also a completely valid piece of data, and often they're the same. So there you go. Anyway, let's continue. So, okay, I promised I would try to keep this as simple as possible. I promise I'll try. So here's the derivation of BPI from the PGF. So define the following quantities. S prime, K prime, and Z prime. These are simply the score, Kaiden average, and the server record divided by the max score, which will give you the rate, right? For example, 1900 on shift divided by the max score, 2000, will give you 0.95, which is 95%, right? This is the number you need to throw into the PGF, so of course we're going to do that. Define capital S, capital K, and capital Z as the PGFs of those scores. Okay, we haven't done anything special here. All we've done is calculate the PGFs. Next, define S prime, sorry, capital S prime and capital Z prime as S over K and Z over K. capitals, of course. All this does is normalize the score and the server record by the k. Right? These are k normalized values. It's not so important. Just don't worry about it. So at this point, mathematically, it's natural to try something like that. Okay, 100 times capital S prime over Z prime, and just say, okay, that's BPI. Right? If your Z is very, if your S prime, capital S prime is very close to your Z prime, then your, BPI will be close to 100. Okay, let's just say 100 is a nice number, so 100 is a good score. If your capital S prime is far from your capital Z prime, then your BPI will be lower. Okay, pretty simple, right? But for those who are mathematically inclined, you realize very quickly that if you do that, then there's actually no relation on k. If you look at the definition of S prime and Z prime, they depend on k. So those just go straight out of the window. So there's no lower limit. It's just a completely relative measure. So anyway, this can be improved, as we will see. So okay, let's continue. At this point, okay, let's introduce the natural logarithm. Okay, don't worry about it. I'm not going to talk about it, but basically, in order to achieve a better score, right, you need to keep upping your ratio, and how much you have to up your ratio gets harder and harder, right, to get better scores, right? Going from max minus 20 to max minus 10 is just about as hard from going from max minus 10 to max minus 5, right? But the difference went down by half each time. So it's mathematically very logical and very natural to use the natural logarithm because it's an exponential function. Okay. Anyway, so, okay, here's another suggestion. Instead of just simply taking the fraction, capital S prime over capital Z prime, let's take the natural logarithms of both. This is better, but not perfect. So at this point, Nori did some experimentation with different songs. He looked at songs like Mosaic, which are extremely high. The server record is extremely close to maximum, and for example, something like Diavolo, which is notorious for being extremely difficult to time, and the server record is very far. And he noticed that for songs that are too close to maxed, the BPI measure becomes too skewed and it's too difficult to get a good BPI. And on the other hand, for songs like Diavolo that have a relatively low server record, say 93% or whatever it is, it's too easy to get a good BPI. So it's not really fair, right? It's not really consistent across the different types of songs. So after some experimentation, he arrived at, drum roll please, this formula. Okay, it's basically the same thing. All he did was raise the fraction to an exponent, and this smooths out the inconsistencies, generally speaking, between different songs. It's not perfect. I mean, we're not working with very much data here. We're only working with 4 numbers, and we're trying to cover a vast array of different types of songs and difficulties all at once with one formula, right? It really, if you think about it, that's actually a fool's errand. But, I mean, we try our best, right? So here's our formula for BPI. Ta-da! Another way to express this, just using the values S, K, Z, and M, is like this. There you go. That's it. And this is what's used in Excel when I show you later with the BPI sheets. Anyway, so okay. Scary formulas, they're gone. Okay. Other important formulas. Okay. Just copying the same thing. Okay, whatever. This function can be inverted, right? Okay, you take a score and you want to find what BPI that is. On the other hand, maybe you want to find, oh, I want to achieve 30 BPI on this song. What score do I need to achieve that? Well, okay, just invert the function and there you go. It's extremely ugly, I understand that. But what's beautiful actually is that you can graph this, and this gives you a graphical representation of BPI and percent. So this is just an example where the Kaidan average is a AAA, which is 88.88%, and the server record is a 98%. Probably should have chosen 99% because that's probably more close to some other things, but anyway, whatever. Close enough. But as you can see, right, BPI goes along the bottom and percent goes up the y column, the y-axis. Yeah, you know, okay. To get a BPI of 20, you need what, roughly 94% or something like that? Yeah, that's a pretty big jump from AAA, which is, you know, roughly 89%. But I think that's reasonable, right? It's so much easier to go from a AAA ratio, which is actually a PGF of 4.5, to, you know, a 94, which is, you know, probably about a PGF of what, 9 or so? Yeah, you know, it's a lot harder to increase your ratio by that much, right? If you think about that, right? 3.5 to 9, that's a really big increase in ratio, so it makes sense that you have to push it that much. Anyway, so that's just a graph. And then finally, the last thing. Roughly speaking, you can approximate the rank of a score on a song. Roughly. I stress that. Because we don't have enough data actually to, you know, tweak the formula to make it work, really, if that makes any sense. So this is really just a theory. So even it's theory upon theory. So, you know, you don't put much stock in this, but generally speaking, this will kind of give you a very rough idea. Just using this function to give you an idea, you know, what does the BPI mean? Well, it's roughly equal to these ranks. So it's defined so that 100 BPI is the server record. So of course that means you're first. And 0 BPI is defined so that 0 BPI is the Kaiden average. So of course that's going to be, well, 2,154. This is as of Tricarl, right? So it's a little bit old. So, you know, the formula needs to be tweaked a little bit, but okay, generally speaking, this is going to be about the same. There are about 5,000 Kaidens now, not a big difference. So, you know, when you get 10 BPI on a song, you are roughly around 1,000th rank, like, just roughly. Just to compare to someone who gets 50 BPI, who's sitting at roughly 46th. I mean, depending on the song, how popular it is, how many people played it, right? If not that many people play it, not every single kaiden, not every single player plays a song, right? Of course, your rank is going to be higher just because fewer people played it, but relatively, right? This just shows you how good different BPIs are. So any BPI over 50 is ridiculously good, right? Like this is pushing ranker level. And for example, people like Dolce, who of course have a lot of server records, but if they don't have a server record on a song, people like Dolce tend to have 70 or more BPI because he's just that good, right? Even on songs that he doesn't like or that he's not particularly good at, he's going to be probably top 10, probably easily, right? Because it's Dolce, he's God. So it just gives you an idea. So yes, if you are calculating your own BPIs, this just gives you a very rough idea of how good your BPI is. Anyway, personally, I'm aiming for 40 BPIs, which I don't usually achieve. I'm usually in the 20 to 30 range, or honestly speaking, 20 to 30. Sometimes I get lucky, I guess, and hit 40. Sometimes I'm extremely lucky and hit 50. And that's when I'm really happy, but I mean, that's rare. People like Matt often hit 40s quite consistently. He has more BPIs above 40s than he does below 40, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. But that just shows you, right, how good Matt is right now and how, you know, how close he is really to the top. It just gives you an idea of that. So there you go. Let's continue. Right, let's look at some examples. Okay, I copy pasted the ranks on the right. Okay, so as I said before, let's take a look at double A another. A AAA on double A another, which has 1,834 notes. Okay, a AAA is 3260. Okay, the server record on double A currently is 3625, and the Kaiden average currently is 3175. So, okay, as you can see, this score, a AAA on double A is already better than the Kaiden average. And plenty of people in the group have achieved a AAA on double A. and have achieved scores far above AAA. So this is not so unreasonable, as you can see. What BPI is this? Well, 2.16, or roughly speaking, 1825 rank. Okay, that's seems pretty reasonable to me. Can about 2,000 people AAA, AA in the world, or at least on EMUs? I think that's pretty reasonable. I mean, of course, there are players who haven't gotten Kaiden, like Dolce probably. He probably still 8 Dan because he doesn't need to prove himself anymore. So these people's data isn't included, but you know, such people are outliers. So generally speaking, it's pretty reliable. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Let's try some other scores. Let's go up a little bit. What about a 92%? Which is a score of 3375. This is 9.85 BPI, or rank close to 1,000. Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. Can 1,000 people get 92% or better on AA another? Yeah, I think that's about right. And then just finally 96%, which is 3521. A good score on AA another, for sure, would put you at 34.94 BPI, and that would be rank 147. Yeah, again, I think that's pretty close to what it would be. I mean, it's hard to say. Konami has never provided any data or rankings for any songs, really, ever. I mean, the weekly ranking system is one such thing, but it's not so easy to pull the data from that anyway. So, anyway, here you see the beauty of the system. It kind of gives you some interesting data to ponder. Almost done. So finally, let's just discuss pros and cons of this system. Some pros first. Let's start with good news. Yes, as I've said before, calculating BPI only requires 4 numbers. Wow, that's, I think that's pretty cool, actually. Given that you only have 4 numbers to work with, I think you can actually produce a lot of meaningful data and see interesting trends and compare scores and whatnot. So I think it's actually a really beautiful system. Nori's an amazing guy. Yeah, and I think the system's strength is in its simplicity. Other pros. Yeah, I think that BPI can measure score quality quite objectively. It doesn't take tier lists or any such kind of thing into account. It just takes raw data, and allows you to compare BPIs on different songs using that raw data to BPIs of other songs quite objectively. Like, oh, this BPI is higher, it must be a better quality score. It's pretty simple. Yes, as we've mentioned, it gives decidedly approximate, but gives a general sense of your rank on a score, which is important because Konami has never really given us that, except on CS styles. But of course, that data is extremely old, right? That data is from when DJ Troopers and Empress were actually out in arcades because they pulled real arcade data. So, okay, yeah, that's really cool, and I think a lot of people actually really like that. And I honestly wish that Konami would just include that in the game so that we could kind of do away with BPI entirely. Like if we had a ranking, in the game, we wouldn't need any of this, which, well, I guess is kind of sad because I'm making this video. But anyway, in the absence of a real ranking being displayed in-game or on the site or something like that, I think BPI is probably the best possible alternative given the little data that we have. And finally, as I mentioned before, I'm getting ahead of myself, if you calculate the BPIs in different songs, say all of the 12s that you've played or 11s, or it doesn't matter, any songs, you can compare your score's quality against the score quality of other songs you've played and other people who've played them. Yeah, it's not just an absolute measure. It's like how much better is a 95% on AA compared to a AAA versus like a 95% on Diavolo compared to a AAA on Diavolo. I mean, I don't think anybody has even achieved a 95% on Diablo. So there you go. I mean, but you know, if you don't know the songs that well, or if you don't know, you know, some of the nuances about, you know, how hard it is to AAA songs, you know, how do people generally do on these things, then it allows you to look at that. So it's cool. On the other hand, some weaknesses. Yeah, okay, we have to talk about weaknesses too. Cons. Yeah, let's be honest, it's not easy to calculate. The natural logarithm is not a function that's typically found on, you know, simple calculators. It is on scientific calculators, but you know, it's not, and it's not something that you can do in your head at all. It relies heavily on the natural logarithm and exponentiation to arrive at the answers. So, you know, it's not a nice thing. You can't just use plus, minus, times, and divide to get to your answer, which, yeah, sure, is a weakness. You have to rely on, you know, technology, like spreadsheets or calculators to do it. But anyway, so there's that. A discussion that haven't really talked about yet, but unfortunately, the BPI system is very sensitive to changes in the server record. Generally speaking, the server record doesn't change so much, but for example, when Dolce completely wrecks his own existing server record on a song, notably Idola recently, he recently got max minus 18 on Idola, where I believe the previous world record was max minus 33, or server record was max minus 33, also held by him, I believe. But such a huge difference between max minus 33 and max minus 18 completely changes the BPIs. Now, some people might be thinking, oh, but I mean, that's not really fair, right? I mean, it's just one dude. I mean, one god, Dolce, who, you know, just changes everything. I mean, is that really fair? I mean, yeah, that's a discussion that you could have. But again, given the little data that we only have the one number, right? Ideally, we would probably take an average of the top 3 scores, an average of the top 5 scores, an average of the top 10 scores, or what have you. And so, you know, it wouldn't be as sensitive to one person changing the server record, right? Because we would have a look at, you know, the top 10 players on a song if we had access to such data, and then we, you know, we could use that as the upper limit, and then, you know, we could massage the formulas and make it a lot more, you know, whatever, but we don't have it, so that's something we just have to live with. So, but that is a very valid criticism of the system. Yes, it's also reliant on the Kaiden average. Duh. But no, what I mean by that is pulling the server record is easy from the EMU site. You can just search it in the top ranker portion. Well, anyway, I'll take a look at that later, but unfortunately, the Kaiden average can't be pulled from the EMU site as far as I know. It can only be pulled from in-game. So, you know, actually getting the data is difficult because you actually have to play the song and set your pacemaker to the Kaiden average, which means you have to be a Kaiden yourself, and you have to be playing on EMUs yourself, and you actually have to want to play the song. You know, that includes all the songs you hate, like Scream Squad, for example, or whatever. You gotta play them if you want to know the BPI on it. I mean, if you don't care about the BPI on it, you don't have to play it. It's fine, but you know, people want to know. So, you know, myself, when I was going through and actually pulling out all those Kaiden averages, I decided to play the 12s that I wanted to play anyway, and just note that data down. And then I had, you know, roughly 80 or so songs, that 12s that I didn't really feel like playing. So I just jumped into P-Free and selected the song, saw the data, quickly quit out, and then chose the next one and did that, and you know, spent a couple P-Free rounds just pulling the data out. I totally don't mind doing that, but that is a weakness of the system, right? It's not so easy to update these things, unfortunately. So yeah, that's just a weakness of the data, I guess. So in that sense, if we can find a different number to use as the lower limit, then, you know, an easier number to pull from the data, or something that's just static like AAA or something like that, then, you know, we can change the whole system, but that radically changes the ranks and all that kind of stuff. So the system will change fundamentally if we do that. So it's a trade-off. Anyway, and finally, there are a couple edge cases that, who knows, maybe you have thought of, or not. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But in the case that the server record is max, like for example in Shift's case, what happens to the BPI calculation? For those who checked the formula closely, you'll notice that the BPI formula as it is there is undefined if the if the server record is the max score, because you're going to be dividing by 0, which is not very good. So the BPI would probably jump off to positive infinity, which is not good. In such a case, the formula can be adjusted to work in the case that a score is maxed. I didn't include that because I thought that would be too much, and people's eyes would just glaze over at that point, rightfully. But yeah, it can be adjusted for, and I have that included in the spreadsheet that I'm just about to go to after this. So you can just ignore it, just okay, it works, okay, great, And if you're really interested about how that works, then, well, please read the BPI document. I will add a section about that later. And finally, the last thing, we're finally done. As I said earlier, right, the score has to be between the Kaiden average and the server record. So what happens when your score is less than the Kaiden average, which is valid for the majority of players? I'm the first to admit that. I understand. Just know that BPI was designed originally to study the quality of scores of top rankers. So all of those people are going to have scores way above the Kaiden average. So this was never a problem. But when we try to extend BPI to everybody, then yes, we have to cater to everybody. So in that case, the formula changes again. And there is an extension of BPI for negative BPIs. So for example, if you had a score that's below the Kaiden average, you might have a BPI of -2, for example. But it's really just an extension of the formula. It's not actually differentiable. It's not a smooth curve between the positive BPI and the negative BPI. It's just kind of stitched together. It's not perfect. So really, it's somewhat meaningless, to be honest. But it's there. It exists. And if people really have a demand to know what their, precise negative BPI is, whatever that means, then, that can be studied further. But I mean, as I said before, basically BPI is designed to look at scores that are above the Kaiden average. So thus far, it hasn't really been something that anybody's really worried about so far. But I mean, that can change. Just saying. Anyway, well, that's all I have for the presentation. Thank you so much for sticking through all of this. Let me just very quickly at the end show, yes, let me just very quickly show you a table that I made of 12s. I also have another one for 11s and whatnot. But anyway, let's just take a look at the 12s one. At the top, I have a universal BPI calculator. Woo! And this just includes all the formulas. This is disgusting, right? This is the BPI calculation. What is going on here, you ask? And I say the same thing. When I programmed this, I must have been high or something, because I don't really remember how this works anymore. But anyway, it works. Trust me, I've tested it and debugged it thoroughly. This can handle cases where your server record is maxed. It can handle cases where your score is below the Kaiden average. It can also handle the case where both of those are true, if the server record is maxed and your score is below the Kaiden average, because the formula does change in each of those cases, and of course handles the regular positive BPI case. It can handle all of those. And as you can see, the example that I have is a 96%, right? 96% on AA and other. Maybe you can see over here in the data, right here. Oh, this is just my score, just because toot my own horn here. Anyway, whatever. See, I can have it 96 on. pretty good at this game, right? No, anyway, sorry. So, and under that, we have the reverse, right? If you have a BPI that you throw in there, what score do you need? Well, okay, well, why don't we test it? Let's just hope this works, because if this doesn't work, this will be extremely embarrassing. Now I'm really scared. Of course, sometimes it will break when the numbers don't work. Don't worry about that. If you get a num error, well, first of all, you shouldn't get a num error, but if you do, then I'm sorry. But that probably means that you entered the data incorrectly, or your no count is off, or something like that, right? Like as they are here. So, what? No count is 1834. That was right there, and the credit number is right there. I'm just blind. Okay, good. Whew! It works out. Whew. Oh, thank God. Okay, so yeah, see, so you get the score back, right? The BPI has to match, and the score has to match. Okay, awesome. Damn. Oh, too sexy. Okay, so there you go. Anyway, what's the point of this table? It just looks like a bunch of crap and a bunch of data, right? Kind of beautifully colored, if I say so myself. But anyway, what does this include? It includes the server records and Kaiden averages updated as of 3 days ago. So that's November 2nd, 2015, Japan time. You know, so basically the end of Pendule, or as close as we're going to get. It has the no counts. It will automatically calculate the BPI for you. Here I've just added a, you know, how far are you from the server record. And also it will give you, you know, how good is a triple A on this song. You know, people often ask, they're like, okay, how good is a triple A on this song? Or like, how hard is this song to triple A? Well, this will tell you, right? Like, okay, a triple A on Eyes is a 33 BPI. That's really good. Like, okay, I just have a little script here telling me, you know, like, oh, what's the rank? Oh, okay, there you go. 33 BPI gives you a rank of 171. Whoa, that's really good. Damn, that means you're like top 200 in the world. So yeah, a triple A on Eyes is really good. Yeah, I got the triple A. Anyway, triple A plus 3. So, or 4 or whatever. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So, you know, you get a quick sense of you know, how hard are certain songs to triple A. Look how high Diablo is. You know, very few people have triple A'd that. No surprise. It's extremely difficult. Other songs that are hard to triple A. Perditis Paradisus, Plan 8, Snake Stick, Thor's Hammer, which is harder actually. Oh, Diablo and Thor's Hammer are almost exactly the same, but Thor's is slightly easier. Or by the BPI at least. Anyway, other hard songs to AAA. Himiko, of course. Mei. Yeah, I mean, obviously. Mei is really hard. Beachside Bunny, etc. Ongaku. Yeah, whatever, right? So this sheet gives you all that. So what's the beauty of this sheet? Well, actually, one nice thing is that if you have a 2dx.me, I understand this is only for people on EA, I'm sorry, for other such people, you have to actually manually enter the scores here, I'm sorry, but, I mean, that's all you have to do, everything else is done for you. You can actually copy-paste this like this. So go from here, you know, include this point here, and just scroll to the bottom, and copy up until the last cell. This is actually just a table, right? Let's copy it. Okay, let's hope this doesn't screw up. I froze the window here so you can find where it's supposed to paste. Paste it here. Boom. Okay, good. The font changed for some reason. I'm not sure why. But as you can see, this table will actually pull your scores out from this raw data using some functions or whatever, and automatically updates all of your BPIs and everything for you. So it's a beautiful system. So, you know, you just do it and then it's done. Yeah, I've grayed out this part because Checknet's Part 2 isn't in the game currently, but it just shows up on 2dx.me for whatever reason. I guess because it was available for a short time in Pendule. Yeah, I mean, also, I mean, if you care, this thing also tracks your lamps. I tried to make it look a little bit roughly like lamps on in game. So you know, white for hard clear, yellow for an X hard clear, blue for FC because I couldn't find a way to make it flashing rainbow, right? Etc. It also counts how many you have of these. But yeah, anyway, yeah, this table took quite a long time to make, but yeah, it's really handy if you have 2DX yeah, so that's basically all I wanted to say about BPI. I think it's an interesting concept and can actually be used to, yeah, get a sense of, for me personally, right, it gives me a sense of my weaknesses. I always know, I knew from before, I didn't need BPI to tell me, but I knew that my scores on scratch songs are very bad. As you can see, right? Okay, black, 14. Gravigaze is really low too. Oh, this is after Dolce got an unbelievably good server record. Thanks, man. Thanks. Red, terrible BPI. Where else? Watch Out Part 2. Nah, actually not so bad for me. No, that's not so bad. Where else? Wait, what? I'm missing all of the... Oh, right here. Beats the Bunny, 5. Yeah, everybody knows this is my worst song ever. I haven't even cleared it, ever. I have a failed lamp. But yeah, I see BPI will tell you that. There you go. What else? Anything else? And it also gives you, of course, more positively, gives you an idea of what songs you're good at. So I'm good at A. I'm good at G59, apparently. Yeah, I like G59. This is pretty cool. I'm good at Hollywood Galaxy. I'm good at Invitation. I just got lucky. Good random. I got also lucky on Mosaic because I ground the hell out of it. Huh. Session 9, not bad. Not bad on Toad Street. Vox Up, one of my favorites. RN is the best. But anyway, enough of my own scores. It doesn't really matter. But the point I'm trying to make is that you can, you know, very quickly get a sense of how good your scores are relative to each other and relative to other people, right? That's the whole point of the system. So hopefully this is somewhat convenient to do that. So I'll include a link to this in the video description so you can use it. I recommend just Control A, Control C-ing and pasting everything to your own Google Sheet. Just copy paste it. Because if I give you the view link, which I will, you can't actually edit these values, of course. So if you don't want to see my disgusting scores, you know, don't. Just copy the sheet and, you know, destroy this part or copy over your data or whatever, or, you know, re-enter the stuff. Just do that, and it'll work. And it'll be your own BPI sheet. There you go, your very own. Yeah, but I think that's everything. This has been a little bit longer than I wanted. Anyway. Thanks for watching until the end if you did. Thanks for your patience, and if you have any questions, give me some things in the comments. Yeah, it was great making this, so thanks for watching. See you next time.